Where have all the Lakers gone? You've gone inside to keep others safe. You're being flexible, creative, adapting to new ways of learning, connecting, and making a difference. These spaces miss your energy, your voice, your effect. But we know, Lakers, you'll be back, stronger for the sacrifices. The world is healthier and safer because Lakers know when to be seen and when to be felt. The world is better because of your Laker effect.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Grand Valley State University's virtual town hall for our faculty. I am really glad to see so many familiar names in the participant list. We have missed seeing you on campus. My name is Jesse Bernal, and I'm the Vice President for Inclusion, Equity, and Presidential Initiatives at Grand Valley, and I'll be helping to moderate our time together. This town hall is part of a series of town halls President Mantella is hosting for all our campus stakeholders. You also have the opportunity to engage with many of our panelists here today and other executive officers in virtual open office hours that began this week. A link to more of that information will be shortly provided in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. As you can imagine, we received many questions during the registration process, and we'll be answering as many as we can in some opening comments, as well as throughout our time together. For those that we do not get to, I want to assure you that we will be responding to individuals if you had individual circumstances that you submitted via questions. And we'll also be following up to this entire group and all of our faculty members tomorrow afternoon with an email that also contains a recording of today's session and tomorrow's faculty session. I also just want to acknowledge that in these challenging times, we have seen the very best of people. Our faculty in particular have risen to the occasion to support our community, our students, and each other. Thank you for all that you do and continue to do. But as you also know, the pandemic has highlighted systemic inequities that impact our underrepresented communities in disproportionate ways. And we received a number of questions from our thoughtful and caring faculty related to these realities. Several have asked what the university is planning in terms of education and training to address xenophobia, racism, bias, and hate. While we have been fortunate to not have received any experiences or incidents on campus since moving to remote operations, know that the Division of Inclusion Equity and the entire university leadership is actively planning to include educational components within our already planned educational series that was commissioned by the president earlier this semester to address anti-Semitism and Indigenous learning opportunities. Thanks to all the faculty and staff, many of you here today who have been willing to help support these engagements, which will be both offered online first and in person when we're able to do so. Now, a bit of logistics, if you're not used to Zoom, I know many of you have been on Zoom hours and hours a day, so you're probably very familiar with it. But at the bottom of your screen, you will see two options. There's a Q&A box where you are encouraged to ask additional questions that were not previously submitted. There's also an open chat box where you can submit comments, ask for clarification, or provide additional information to the panelists. We'll be responding to some questions live and others through typed responses that everyone has access to in both of these places. Again, the Q&A box and the chat box. As you will see, we have many university leaders joining us today. I'd like to introduce first our Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs, Professor Maria Chimitili. Our Vice President for Finance and Administration and Treasurer to the Board of Trustees, Dr. Greg Saniel. Matt McLogan, our Vice President for University Relations and Secretary to the Board of Trustees. Chick Blue, whose official name is Lynn, Vice President for Enrollment Development. Karen Loth, Vice President for University Development. And Bonnie Bowen, our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, as well as Tom Butcher, our Vice President and General Counsel. With that, I will now turn it over to our president, President Philomena Mantella.
Thank you, Jesse, and welcome to all of our faculty. It's great to be with you virtually. I have to honestly say I wish I was with you physically and that you were walking our halls along with our students. And I'm on the campus today as one of our essential workers in terms of just being sure that business keeps moving forward. And it's a lonely place here, so can't wait till we're in a position to be taking on Laker life as we have many, many years through the past. First, let me thank all of you. I hope you have heard my voice in a variety of ways over the last several weeks and even months now, and the deep appreciation everyone on the senior leadership team has for our faculty and the way in which you work to be sure our students were able to continue their learning uninterrupted. It was, as Jesse said in his opening remarks, it certainly was a time where people see the best of a community, and this community certainly didn't disappoint. Everybody was focused and attentive to the work ahead, and I have to say that I'm still struck by having gone to our library to some of the trainings over the 4-day period when we went remote. And I recall that every question that the faculty asked at that moment was about students and how they are going to traverse this period. And that just said so much to me about who you are as individuals and how much balancing I am sure you're doing, like all of us, of personal circumstances, changes in your own patterns in life, worries and concerns about wellness of our families, ourselves, and our community more broadly. And the fact that you could stay focused on the work at Grand Valley is just a testament to who you are as individuals. So my deepest thanks. And don't stop. Don't stop caring about the public health. Don't stop in terms of the work we're doing. I think we're all experiencing a longer disruption than we ever thought we would. The curves looked very differently than they look today. And we need every person at Grand Valley and their best of them as we ride through what is clearly an unprecedented period in our world history. Can't even say nation history or state history, our world history. When you really sort of step back a moment and think about it, 1.5 billion students across the world went remote or online within a 30-day period. It's pretty staggering, that kind of shift at that kind of pace that we had to really address, accommodate, and continue to do our work. 9 out of 10 students today are online or remote or working with learning packets, but not in a face-to-face instructional mode. And as Jesse said, the inequities in our educational system, both at the K-12 and higher education, are very pronounced at the moment. And we're doing everything we can to bridge those circumstances for our students. I want to share with you a little bit about how your senior team has been thinking about managing the current circumstances and the current state of the university. And what I can tell you right up front is I don't know all I wish I knew that they could know, and that everything that I say is as much as I do know and accurate as of today, because I think we're all in a situation that is turbulent and continues to be dynamic, and we may have to adjust. But I know I'm joined by the members of the senior team when I say our best thinking with our community is to share as much as we know and trust that they will understand if and when things need to shift. So that's the attitude that we come to you with today. So how have we made decisions? I think first and foremost, we've led with our values. Our values to keep students at the heart of what we do. And it's clear, and you're exemplifying that. Our values to keep people at the heart of what we do, our faculty and staff community. and to the extent that we can be a stability in their lives right now, that's what we want to be. And the power to be a stability in your lives, in our lives, is so much in all of our hands, because the capacity to mitigate harm for Grand Valley is in our hands. The opportunity for us to be even more powerful an engine in what will likely be a prolonged recession, as education has always done, is in our hands. And if anything that I want to achieve today is to continue to inspire you to work together, to work with us, to give us the best of yourselves. That's all we can ask, and that I am confident that will mitigate the kind of harm that will be seen across higher education. So a couple things I would say in terms of leading with our values. You have seen circumstances at other institutions around the refunding of housing, board, and parking, where those decisions were delayed, or where students were given a flat fee return. Grand Valley decided very early on, I think we were the first to prorate the room and board and parking for the time students weren't on campus, and to release those dollars directly to the students. Again, I use that as an example of the way in which we're putting our students front and center. And we will continue to do that. We will continue to question each decision. Is it consistent with who we are? Is it consistent with our values? We also have tried to structure our decision-making so that we can bring in the best possible information and move quickly. That's been our focus. We don't want to move when we perhaps shouldn't yet make a decision. So we also are laying out dates for ourselves for which we know it is appropriate to give our faculty and our staff time to plan. We've laid out that the end of this term, we will make a decision the end of winter as it relates to whether summer will be online or not. So we've tried to create these catalyst dates, as well as make decisions when we have good information, and make them quickly and decisively so people can have some certainty where we can offer it. The third part, and again, I should pause and thank the incident management team who is working on all of our behalfs and bringing up all of the issues that can and should be anticipated in both the ramp down and the ramp up to full face-to-face activity. And they are working daily, many times, multiple times a day. And they are also connected through Brandon DeHaan, our Chief of Public Safety, to our senior leadership team, who is meeting daily for the decisions that need that level of view. So we're trying to move quickly and decisively. And the third element of our plan during this period is to communicate frequently, repeatedly, and in different ways. And you've probably, I hope you've seen that. This forum is yet another example. And so I apologize right up front if you look at my emails and say you're getting too many, but I'd rather hit, two people who have not seen it before, and be sure people are getting the information they need. So that's the way in which we're thinking about our planning frame. And I would say we're working for the best, which means mitigating harm, looking for opportunities to show the best of Grand Valley at a time where an institution that has a great deal of care, that leads with care, can be very appealing to young people and their parents. So we're working hard and planning and executing on trying to mitigate harm. And at the same time, we're planning for the worst. We're working on contingency plans and being sure that we are prepared if this becomes a prolonged crisis for us to manage. So With that, I'd like to turn over to Greg Saniel, our VP for Finance and Administration, to give you a sense of the financial health of the institution. Greg?
Thanks, President Mantella. The financial health of the university is strong. To look at the crisis, we need to look at it in two parts, kind of the short term, which we're in right now, and then maybe the medium term as we move into the summer and then the fall. Within the university, the refunds and then other financial impacts caused by closure of things like the bookstore where we have lost revenue. Total hit to the university is about $12 million. Within the short term, within the current fiscal year, the university's financial health and financial maneuvering room, with a combination of factors to include a large contingency that we build into the budget every year, and then also our strategic reserves, we're able to absorb that $12 million reduction relatively easily. It hits, but we can do that with the financial depth that we have because of a history of conservative financial planning at the university. And again, that contingency that's built in. That's where you can see a commitment we have to our employees through the June timeframe, through the end of the fiscal year. As we move from the short term, which we have financial strength resources, into the medium or longer term, the university still has this tremendous depth in our ability with financial resources, more uncertainty as we move forward. Normally in the budget cycle, we would be just about wrapping up our internal process to develop our budget for next year. But because we have so much uncertainty with what the deep, is it a deep trough, more prolonged? So we're delaying that as long as possible to get the best information we can so that we then work our budget as we move into next year. And so that's where we are. We have the depth, we have the financial resources, and I think as we've really using that depth to focus on our employees and our faculty and staff moving forward.
Thank you, Greg. I would like to take this moment to really acknowledge my predecessors and the faculty who have been with this university for many years, because you've been so much a part of the condition that Greg has outlined for us, which is to understand that these kinds of contingencies are critical for moments like this. And it has kept us from having to react like some institutions have, which is, in order to survive, we must have liquidity, and therefore we must make decisions today that perhaps wouldn't be the decisions you would make if you had 3 months or 6 months or a year to react to situations which create a new set of conditions. So thank you to my predecessors, and thank you to the faculty who have been a part of the university community and planning for a very long time. Let me turn over now, but before I do, to our provost, I want to first thank the senior team, and especially the provost, who with a substantial part of the core of this institution that reports through her, has done just incredible work and been an incredible partner to this journey. So thank you, Maria, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, President Mantella. It's a very nice compliment. It's wonderful to be part of a team that works together and collaborates on thinking of all the different perspectives that we need to bring to the table. So thank you. First, before I get into some details, I do want to thank all of the faculty. I know exactly what it's like to teach a full load, attending the needs of students, and the needs have just increased threefold, fourfold, etc. And I know the faculty, I know you care tremendously about students, and you're sacrificing yourself in order to meet those student needs. The work-life balance that I know you must be feeling, either with families at home or worrying about families elsewhere. So I know these stressors are on you all the time, and I just want to thank you for doing as much as you do for our students. It really is our core values, as President Mantella mentioned at the beginning of her remarks. I've seen the creativity people have in course delivery. It is humbling. What you do in your classes, turning on a dime to teach remotely, has been incredible. I know that you all have been helping one another and working with our incredible IT partners to make sure that our students continue to receive the education that they deserve. I want also to say that we all know that there's a difference between teaching remotely and intentional online teaching. And so I thank all of you who have experience in intentional online pedagogy and helping the faculty who have not experienced that before. That help has tremendously aided our students in having that good education that I just mentioned. As we think about moving ahead, I want to say now shared governance is more important than ever before. It is always a hallmark of what it means to be here at Grand Valley, shared governance, but the importance of it moving forward cannot be overstated. As Greg was mentioning, we have a very good outlook in terms of finishing this fiscal year because of the contingency that we have had built in. Moving forward, we'll look at enrollment numbers, and as we all know, enrollment is the main part of our tuition revenue is the main part of our budget. So as we look at enrollment numbers, we hope, of course, they're as robust as possible, and I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to help us with those enrollment numbers. But if those enrollment numbers aren't as robust as they have been in the past, then we will have to make decisions about our budget. I've been working closely with Felix Nagasa, Chair of UAS, and Sean Boltzma, Vice Chair of UAS, and we'll be working in partnership with the deans and Bob Hollister, who's the chair of our Faculty Salary and Budget Committee. As we make decisions, we want you to know what they are as soon as possible. The deans and I have been working on budget planning, just looking at different scenarios for those enrollment numbers. Those discussions are going to be happening over the next few weeks and over the summer. And because many of our faculty are on 9-month contracts, I want to urge you to make sure that you're reading your email. Read Noteworthy, which comes out every few weeks out of my office. We'll be sending information in that format. I'll also be continuing my faculty town halls as we make decisions so that you'll have a chance to have an interactive opportunity to ask questions. And I think those of you who have come to the earlier town halls, I looked at the participant list and I noticed there's some overlap. So I really appreciate those of you who were able to make time for both of these venues. The other aspect I just want to make sure everyone is aware of, we have made decisions with ECS and faculty governance around not using the LIFT evaluations in our faculty tenure and promotion processes or the FARs. You're still able to conduct informal LIFT evaluations if you'd like to do that, and those questions are embedded in Blackboard for your use. However, they will not be used for our formal evaluation processes. Secondly, junior faculty have the option of pausing the tenure clock, and you can do that by just sending a request to your dean. We want to make sure that faculty are protected. If you are teaching remotely for the first time, we don't want faculty to be penalized in any way. So you just contact the dean to inquire about pausing the tenure clock. Lastly, in terms of our academic policies, you know that we have expanded the use of incompletes and credit, no credit. For the credit, no credit, you will be asked to give students a grade. Students will then be given a letter grade. Students will then be given the opportunity to choose either a credit for their course or the letter grade. So I want to make sure people are aware of that policy. You can find more details on the Provost Office website, but you will be asked to provide a letter grade for every student who has determined if they want to take the credit, no credit after the grading period. I mentioned just another detail. I know that faculty will be having questions with regard to graduate students in the upcoming year. The graduate student funding will remain the same just as it has last year going into next year. So I saw that that was a particular question I know many of you have that I want to be sure to answer. With regard to those enrollment numbers, the best thing that you can do, because I know that's what you're thinking, what can I do to help? Connect with students and make sure that they are on track for their educational pathway. Send them to advisors if they have questions. If they're having issues around mental health, send them to our counseling center. If they're having financial hardships, please send them to financial aid. You know the students better than anyone. If you notice a student isn't attending class, please reach out to them. If you continue not to get a response, then send that to either the dean's office or to the dean of students office. They will reach out and try to help make sure that the student is on track. But your connection is vital. In my office, we don't have connection with 25,000 students, but if each one of you make sure that you're connecting with each of your students, that will help tremendously. As you know, if students stop out for any reason, and if they are having, if they have financial aid loans, they will be asked to pay them back. It is much better for them to continue on their trajectory with regard to their educational pathway, if only for financial reasons. And of course, we know that it's better for their learning capability to continue on. If students do stop out, it's much harder for them to then re-enroll with their financial aid packages as well. So just those things to keep in mind as you're talking to students about financial literacy. Our financial aid office has a top-notch team. As Chick will tell you, they are there to help with hardship funds for students and to help them make good decisions. Our advisors in our academic advising and SASE really do know what to tell students around those issues of internships, co-ops, clinicals. Obviously, there's a great amount of unknown around how we're going to reinvest in clinicals, but we are thinking about that daily and again, help students find the resources they need around those questions. I think that covers most of the questions that people have, and I know, Jesse, you might have some other detailed ones that people are asking, but again, I just want to thank everybody. I know you're doing your absolute best. I have the absolute confidence in the faculty. I know you make good decisions. I know you have the expertise, and I know more than anyone, you create what Grand Valley is today. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I want to underscore what Maria said, that all our virtual services are open. And the biggest challenge we have is knowing what's going on with our students because the circumstances for each person in this event, world event, is so different. So to the extent that you can be that resource for us, I really believe we have the capacity to respond. We've been building hardship funds in order to respond to students. We'll have some additional resources, and we simply have to know who they are, where they are, and what they're dealing with. And I really have a great deal of confidence we'll be able to be responsive to them. So again, thank you on behalf of all of us for everything you're doing, and I'll turn it back to Jesse for the additional questions.
Great, thank you, President Mantella. So we received some specific questions and people are appreciating the financial state of the university that Vice President Saniel presented, but some specific questions around the status of future staffing, hiring, particularly with some interest in the impact we may see on adjunct and affiliate faculty, the status of the up and coming salary increase program, and any updates on current searches.
Great. So I will just say again, we're relying on everyone for being discerning and in terms of the planning. We are asking people to look at the searches and determine if that position is essential to work with their executive officer, to determine whether that is a critical position or whether it's best and can be delayed until we know the outcome of our enrollment. Our enrollment today for the spring and summer is running about 7% behind, and for the fall it's running about 10% behind. We do believe and have evidence of this in a variety of ways that we're catching up every day on those percentages, that people have both delayed behavior as well as perhaps some reconsiderations or some new challenges to manage. So we do believe that we'll be in a better position tomorrow than where we are today because we've all been shaken by the current circumstances. But I'll turn to the provost first and then to Greg for additional insight on the specificity of those questions. So Maria?
Sure. With regard to hiring faculty, Again, as President Mantella just said, for those searches that are ongoing right now, we hope to continue with those that are absolutely vital. And I've had conversations with each of the deans around those. With regard to fall semester, again, so much will be dependent upon enrollment. As President Mantella just said, we hope that every day those enrollment numbers go up. If they do not, then we will have to make some decisions about scheduling and staffing levels, but we won't make those decisions until we know with greater certainty what those numbers are.
Great. Greg, did you want to add anything?
No, just as I mentioned earlier, we're delaying our budget process for the next cycle, just so we have as much information as we can and get the best information that we can before making these kind of decisions.
Several questions about the future of online education for Grand Valley, and in particular, any planned investments in the hiring of more instructional designers or IT staff, as well as new technologies to support online learning delivery. And a similar question, how are we preparing faculty to better be prepared to teach online in the future?
So a couple of things. I think as the provost said, it's really important to recognize that we had a forced migration to remote education. And that is quite different than a strong pedagogy around online learning. And we need to continue to, from wherever we are, to continue to move forward on increasing the opportunities for high engagement, high impact online learning. I think we will, it is likely that we'll experience some new things, some new dynamics. Everything won't just simply return to normal. And some of the things that we were working on are even more important today. We know that in 2008, the adult enrollment grew by 1/3 over the next 10 years because adults found the opportunity to go back to school and the importance of a degree. So some of the work we've done on adult learning that's undergirded by high quality, high engagement online learning will be even more critical to our ultimate recovery and the recovery of our state. Both of those things are true and important. So one, we made some investments in instructional technologists just before coming into this crisis, and we'll sustain those investments, and we will be examining whether we need to do more. Our systems, the provost referenced it, our IT folks did an extraordinary job. And if you ask me, the one thing I was most fearful of is, could our systems handle the load of everyone shifting over in a 4-day period? Not only did our systems handle it, but our people stepped up and supported at a level beyond what I thought was, the basic bread and butter of getting it moved over. So we will definitely be examining. I think the one thing we know and understand is that we have to have a strong infrastructure here. We cannot have an infrastructure that is weak. We have to have the best of synchronous and asynchronous platforms to work from. We have to have a level of choice around the platforms we make so that students have a common experience, but it can't be a single choice because that would create too much risk if we had an infrastructure go down, a Blackboard, a Zoom, any of the infrastructures that we utilize. So we are deeply contemplating all of those questions. And I will turn to the provost to add more.
The question of, hiring more IT support, we've recently hired 5 new support technologists, instructional technologists. As we grow online to meet the needs of students, and when I say online, I mean that intentional online that the president just mentioned, we will take those needs into consideration. And I know Chick will be able to fill that out a little bit more right now. The need for those individuals is tremendous across campus. So we try to also provide professional development opportunities through FTLC. So I would urge everyone to go to the FTLC website, and I believe it's in our chat box, that website, to understand what all of the potential faculty development opportunities are. because of the demand, and especially for spring's term when we will still be remote, there are other opportunities rather than foundations, which is excellent, an excellent option, but there are alternatives to foundations that really target those areas that you might need. So if you're interested, as an example, in learning how to have more engaged chat rooms for students, you can go and look at professional development in those areas, and those are very specific professional development opportunities. As you think about what our future holds, I would urge everyone, as your time warrants, to take advantage of those professional development opportunities. The greater quality we can give students, the better their education is. And as we know, there is an unknown element of this COVID-19 virus that we may still be remote in the fall. We just don't know. And so because of that, I would ask you to please hone your skills as you have to be able to deliver a high quality education for our students. As you know, that is my last commitment, is high quality education for our students. And I know you share that with me. And I know it is demanding for you right now to be able to engage in that professional development, but it's so important. And we're asking everyone to think about how to do that even better. The skills that you have in caring for our students, your expertise in your fields, and coupling that with new technologies, I know that we will continue to be the Grand Valley that we've always been.
Great, thank you. I'm going to get to some of the questions that people are asking live, and then we'll get back to some of the earlier questions that people submitted. There's some curiosity about contingency or scenario planning that's being done for the fall, if we happen to have to be remote in the fall as well. What is Grand Valley currently thinking for the fall, or what does that decision-making timeline and process look like?
So we had made a commitment to ourselves that at the end of the winter term, we would make a call as it related to summer. And similarly, our thinking is we'd like to be in a position at the end of spring term to make a call as it relates to fall. I want to be clear, this is only contingency planning. We want to be careful that we don't undermine the excitement. People have been, our seniors in high school are anxious to be off and doing what they normally do. So we don't want to suggest an online format prematurely. But we are looking at all sorts of options around the fall scenario. We're looking at questions of being able to handle social distancing. We're looking at, how we increase within our office space, the privacy, the availability of masks, whether or not to have large events. So we're looking from everything to incremental moves to the more radical move of a semester, another semester online. That's being done in 3 different areas. One is with the IMT, who's many times has, because it's a broad-based group, a great capacity to just say, here's another consideration, here's another consideration. And so they're continuing to unearth the issues and raise the questions. The other is the provost has a group that is also looking, and of course she's working with her council and the deans on contingency planning as well. And then the senior leadership team is looking at the questions, and we will obviously converge and unite those efforts. But we all see them initially from a little bit different vantage point, and that's good because it will help us to make a stronger plan. Maria, anything more you'd like to add to that?
Just as I mentioned earlier, we're working with Felix and Sean and Bob. And so again, the shared governance will be very, very important right now. When I say we, I mean the deans and myself, to take some time to make sure you're looking at your emails for communication. Again, I'll be holding town halls as we make decisions, so that, and interactive town halls, just like I always do with the faculty conversations, so that you have a chance to ask questions. So just please keep in communication with us as we're thinking about what our next steps might be.
So the provost, you mentioned also, the need to look at clinicals differently or other experiential learning differently. We're getting some questions about things like internships as people are nearing graduation and some of those graduation requirements that students aren't able to fulfill because they've traditionally been done in person. Is the university considering alternatives to those traditional requirements, or how should faculty be advising students in their programs to be in the right direction to remain on track for graduation for those experiential learning opportunities that are parts of their degree requirements?
Great. Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say, talk to the deans because each of the requirements of those experiential learning opportunities are so different across the curriculum. And so each of the deans have been working to try to provide as much flexibility as possible for students. In Seidman, as an example, they don't have required internships. So, that it is lucky right now. However, as we're moving forward and thinking about our health professions clinical opportunities, that is going to be dictated in part by our partners. As you know, we had to pull all of our students out of the health professions clinicals in consideration of their safety and the safety of our community. So when we have more information on that, obviously that's a very important aspect of those students' education. We will be making decisions about that. So each area is very, very different. I know in engineering, they've decided to have some alternatives to the co-op. So again, just be in touch with your dean about that. And we are trying to be as flexible as possible for students, but still providing them with opportunities for those experiential learning, courses, excuse me. I got tongue-tied there for a second. With regard to moving forward, if this is something that has a longer life than we anticipate, we will be looking to you all as faculty members to try to figure out what are some different experiential learning opportunities that we can provide for students, where they can apply their theoretical knowledge. The marriage of theory and action is so important for our students. It is the liberal education and professional skill building that has been a hallmark of our education for many years. So we will be asking faculty to think together about the curriculum again if we end up in a situation where we have long-term consequences from the COVID-19.
Great. So Karen and Chick will like this question, but President Mantella, you mentioned the Student Support Fund and other opportunities that the Financial Aid Office has made available to students facing hardship. A few questions about the status of the Student Support Fund, which students are being supported with that, and are there continuing opportunities or needs that employees may be able to donate to or invest in for the university?
Yes, so the account is definitely open and accepting donations for anybody who is so moved. And it is so important to have those resources available. And I would say that the early work is the university looking at our own our own institutional funds, and then trying to garner more of those through the call for student support and the shifts of the campaign around student needs. And probably the funds, if Michelle were on the call right now, she would say went most to the most urgent needs. Students who didn't have devices to learn, who didn't have food, who didn't have transportation home. That's what the early funds that we were able to garner were used for. Now that we will have some federal dollars, that release dollars, CARE dollars that we can utilize. And thankfully, because our financial aid operations has kept open arms around hardship cases. So they've really said, come forward and we'll try to help you. We have a whole set of opportunities to support students of all different kinds of hardship levels, whether it's issues in terms of re-enrollment and retaking courses that they've struggled on, and getting back to campus. So we're looking at all those various pockets in real time now in order to make the best use of the expanded funds we have. I'll turn to Chick and then to Karen to add comments here.
We are right now putting the final plans together to distribute that $9 million to our students. The order of the day with that money is to give it directly to the students that are having the greatest need, not necessarily the technically most needy, but those who have unmet need is what we're struggling with. The thing I would ask all of you is, if you know of a student who's struggling, please send them to the financial aid office. Our crystal ball has gotten rather cloudy, and we can't know unless the student tells us that they're having a struggle. So if you could please direct any student you encounter who says anything about really being in financial difficulty, send them to financial aid, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And Karen?
Yes, as President Mantella said, we in University Development have shifted our focus to both of this hardship fund and then certainly scholarships. So the appeal for the Student Support Fund has been out about a month, and it now stands at $56,000. Now, I know that that might seem small compared to the 9 million that Chick was talking about, but even small amounts, Michelle Rhodes does an incredible job with giving this out. And she recently said that even a gift of a grant of $50 brought a student to tears. So certainly that fund is still accepting more support, and it does not surprise me that many of the faculty and staff have given to that. So we continue to reach out to donors on this, and this fund will grow.
A number of questions around the ramping up or removing or re-engaging on campus for work. Many people are curious about the safety precautions that the university will take as we are able to gather again as a university for our employees, as well as, we'll stop there with that question. There are a couple of follow-up questions, but really any of the measures that we're taking to clean the campus as well as ensure the safety and health of our employees as we re-engage in on-campus work.
Great. I'll just make one sentence, which is the health and well-being of our employees and our students has really come first and foremost. And then I'll turn to Greg Saniel to overview the efforts underway.
The facilities has taken a number of efforts to prepare for as we ramp back up. Back up would be phased in over several weeks so that we can ensure social distancing and the right kinds of preparation. We're in the process of procuring thousands of masks for people that may need them. For people that are working on campus now, they get their temperature taken before they go to work, and then on campus, and then they have personal protective gear. So we will have plenty of that available. Our high standards of cleanliness and cleaning, we will continue to do that, and we will even double down in a number of areas, high traffic areas with extra hand sanitizer and things of that nature. So we will be ready to ensure the health and safety of everybody on campus when we do get back to face-to-face, depending on what kind of guidance that we have from the CDC and from the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. A related question to that, Greg, that a few people have asked is that those essential or critical workers who are coming to campus, including a number of our faculty members to care for labs or animals or things like that, are being asked to track and return health information. There's some questions about the safety and security for their privacy of that information, how the information is being used, how it will be destroyed. Any information or feedback you can give on that?
Of course, we'll handle that with the utmost of care, but first and foremost, the health and safety of everybody on board is important, and we will continue to do that. And the reason for the collecting of that information is if we were to have a case that would be identified, that would enable us to track down any content that had been happening on campus.
Great, thanks. Some questions, President Mantella, you talked about the federal support. Questions about any thoughts on what the state might be doing to support public institutions like Grand Valley during this crisis as they are supporting other organizations like small businesses? I
think the reality of our situation in the state is that a best case scenario would be the maintenance of support given the hit that it's taken to the state tax base. But I'll turn to Matt McLogan to offer any insights here.
I would not expect the state to be in a position to offer Grand Valley or any of the public universities additional support. What will be at issue here is the maintenance of the appropriation in the current fiscal year, which runs through September 30th, and then the budget that's constructed by the state to begin October 1st. There have been a wide variety of estimates about the stress on the state revenues. Yesterday, the University of Michigan's Quantitative Research Office estimated that that might be as much as $2 billion over 2.5 fiscal years, which is a very large number. The public universities exist in the general fund, which is the state's discretionary checkbook. About 18% of our general fund revenue comes from the state, 15% on all budgets, 18% in the general fund. And so we're watching it very closely. I think it's important to note that the federal assistance that we've received so far is actually a pass-through for students and to support students and their ability to return to campus. There's another tranche of federal money that could become available in the next few weeks that might backstop some university employment and other types of very specific entities, but the rules on that have not yet been written. So we're watching it closely, and we will share information with you as quickly as we have more to say.
Matt, could I ask you to say a little more about the maintenance of effort piece that relates to the federal funding? Because I think that's important in thinking about how the state might behave.
The Federal CARES Act has a provision which requires states to maintain level funding for K-12 and higher education if the state is to draw down the funds that are available through the CARES Act. In other words, this was not constructed so that the state could simply reduce its appropriations and replace that money with federal funds. There is a provision for a waiver of that requirement. To my knowledge, as of the time we sit here this morning, the state has not requested a waiver, and therefore the funds are being drawn down, and I can assume that at least for the next few weeks, that's without any action to take a hit on what is otherwise currently appropriated. But if there is to be a change in the state's budget in the current fiscal year, that requires an action by the governor and concurrence by the legislature, and those steps have not yet been put in place, though could be.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. President Mantella, many of our faculty are seeing in the news that universities are reviewing their admissions requirements and offering greater flexibility in admissions. Given some of the comments that you made about a decline right now in enrollment for this coming up fall, are we looking at those that we didn't admit initially and loosening some of our admissions requirements, and what might be longer term changes to our admissions requirements that we might see in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. First, I would say our enrollment development group has done a great job and very early on sort of jumped on the set of issues that might be in place if testing weren't available. So as an example, they looked at the students who were scheduled to retest in order to try to get at that next scholarship level. That happens frequently. They come, they get a scholarship, they come to the interview day, and they are excited to come to Grand Valley and they want to step up that scholarship. And we used alternate metrics to make decisions and not hold the student up. And that's one example. There was about 7 areas the enrollment development area acted in to respond to current state. As it goes forward to the next year, we are going to go SAT optional for the next academic year. And this is a decision that is not yet announced, so we're sharing it here today, but I checked in with my colleagues on, I anticipated the question. I think it was important to share with the faculty. Part of our work in making that decision was certainly acknowledging the disruption. And if you saw on today's news, there's going to be 2 kinds of anxiety around that kind of big stakes test. Is one, will it be available so that I can get what I need in order to be admitted to my university? And 2, will I do as well? We've all experienced, that the online medium is different if it's available online. I know for myself, if I'm reading a memo that's very important, I many times will still print it to sort of absorb the materials differently. And students have that same worry. Can they do as well? So we want to take that worry off of the table for them. And what we have been looking at, did a lot of work with the provost and the enrollment development area, is to examine that we could make good admissions decisions and select a class that we're confident that can do well at Grand Valley and is a good fit without this test. So we will go without the test. We've confirmed for ourselves we can do that. We do holistic admissions. We have a lot of facts around the students' performance, and we'll go into the next year test optional. I've also asked the provost to work with the colleges on the same questions at the graduate level. That we'll have the same issues with GREs and GMATs and application deadlines. And I think to the extent, just as we have working with through shared governance that on the credit, no credit, we've got to look at the same things on the admissions criteria at the graduate level. So I would invite the provost or Chick Blue to add anything that I did not cover.
I just want to underscore what the president said. I know probably behind the question is worry about, you know, the admitting students and can they be successful at Grand Valley. So I just want to reassure everyone, we are, even though we are going test optional, Chick and her team are looking at how can we be sure that the students will be successful at Grand Valley. And of course, I know that the faculty will do their part, but I know that's a question that you all have. We want a class that is on par with the classes that we have had. Our quality of our students have raised, you know, substantially since I started more than 20 years ago. It's part of our reputation of being a high quality institution. So I know people will have concerns about that, and we're balancing the need for flexibility for students and alleviating that stress that President Mantella mentioned, as well as being who we are as an institution. So I just want to assure people that that is very much a part of the conversations that we are having.
The standardized test is a test in time. It's a day you take that test. So we're looking at things that give us a little deeper insight. We're looking at the courses that students are taking, the rigor of those courses. We're looking at a high school GPA represents 4 years rather than just a 1 day. So I don't mean to downplay those standardized tests, but there are several other factors that can help us select the right students and make sure that they are in the top 10% getting certain scholarships. I'm real comfortable that we're going to be able to select a good pool, if not the best pool, from the way we're going to go at it.
Great. President Mantella, a last question and then any final comments that you have. But if you could address in your final comments 2 questions that folks have presented around any support that our faculty and staff can offer for presidential initiatives or service that we might offer to the community, as well as an update on the Innovation Fund.
Great, thank you. So it does weave into my final comments, so I think I'll try to take those as a part of the final comments that I'd like to make. I really want to ask you to do 3 things for us as a university community. First and foremost, to take care of yourselves and your family. It is absolutely critical that you be well, that you be a part of our community. If we lose to your well-being, your ability to be here and be with us and be a part of our community, then that's the biggest loss we could ever take. So please take care of yourself. The second is to take every opportunity to learn and improve. We just talked about the standardized tests. And, you know, they've been debated and questioned for some time. I spent a lot of time looking at this, particularly for students of color, first generation students. There's a lot of questions around those. What a wonderful opportunity to study our capacity with and without the test and look at those very questions. So this crisis, as difficult as it is, will have opportunities for our own learning, and it'll have opportunities that we didn't foresee. And I would urge each of you to look for those. And so it is for that reason that the Innovation Fund will stay in place, that we will utilize resources. If you have ideas and thoughts of the next thing that will help us move forward, We will likely focus those funds to things we know are more pressing. The provost raised the quality of the online experience, the need for designers, the need for new programs that blend work and learning. We know that people are going to need to work more, perhaps. So we will most definitely focus those to the most pressing issue, but we will move forward. So that's the second thing, take every opportunity to learn and improve. And the third thing is do not panic. One of the most important things to know is the universities that will prevail during this period, and I believe Grand Valley can be one of those, is the low in cost, high quality institutions with a level of agility and a level of care, you know, beyond other institutions. We happen to have all of that because of you. We're situated in a safe community. We have many, many assets. Let's grab those. Let's be grateful for those. And let's work together on moving through this. Thank you for being with us today. And, you know, keep positive.
Hail to the